3.
Okay.
Hello and welcome. I'm very happy tonight, very happy to see Barbara Bogner is with us. She's a retired college professor of anatomy and physiology. She's absolutely delighted to be here. That's her quote. And she also taught at Rutgers. She's teaching in Rutgers OLLIRU program, and she's done it for the last 2 years. It's a great program. If people want the link for that, I'll also include that into the follow-up website. So without further ado, and I ask everyone to mute themselves. Barbara, I'm going to mute everybody, and then you're going to have to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Okay, so I'm about to mute everyone. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'm going to be working. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm not muting everybody, but welcome. If I need to mute you, I will. Thank you very much. Barbara?
Hi, everybody. I am Barbara, and thank you all for taking time to be at this meeting and to share what I happen to know about the brain. It's quite mysterious, and what I'd like to first do is I'd like to share my screen with you so that we can take a look at the PowerPoint presentation, and let's do that first, and then we'll be up and running. So let me do that, everybody. Okay. And you should see this. I hope you all see this. And we're going to be doing a little bit about the mysterious brain. And when you think about it, there are lots of things about the human brain that we know. And then there are lots of things that we don't know. And so I'd like to start, first of all, with a little video for you. And when you watch the video, what I want you to do is I want you to think of what must be being processed in your brain in order to understand this video and to enjoy it. So think about what you have to process. The brain says, oh, I need to do this and that. And so let's take a look at the video. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so let's do this. Okay. Whoopsie daisy. Whoa, what's happening here? We got a little problem here now. Ooh. All right, so here we go, everybody. And let's do it.
94-year-old Betty Jenkins came to StoryCorps with her niece in Cincinnati and wanted to tell her about a newfangled contraption that she had gotten from her mother 70 years before, an inflatable bra.
I was very skinny, and I didn't have any curves. I guess my mother got kind of worried because she didn't think I had enough boyfriends. So she bought me a bra that you blow up. I was real excited, so I blew to about 32. I was quite happy with the looks. I got a few wolf whistles. Of course, at that age, you were very self-conscious. That year, I took a trip to South America. I proceeded to fly to Santiago. Soon we were into the Andes Mountains, and it turned out that it was a non-pressurized plane, and I felt very uncomfortable. Things were getting very tight. This bra had started to increase in size. As the thing got bigger, I tried to stand up and I couldn't see my feet. The directions said it would go to 48 if I wanted to. I thought, what will happen if it goes beyond 48? And I found out what happened. It blew out. It was a loud, resounding sound. And the co-pilot came into the cabin with the gun, wondering what had happened. The men all pointed to me. Well, it's difficult to explain to people in English that part of your anatomy just blew out. But to try and do it in Spanish, it's beyond hope. So they made a landing. I was taken off the plane and turned over to 2 women police, and they told me to strip, hunting for what they thought was the bomb. When I stripped down, I showed them the hole in the bra, and they chuckled. And I thought, oh my, they've gotten the point. And I was allowed back on the plane. A month later, I got a bill from the airline for $400 for an unscheduled stop.
Okay, everybody.
90
So think about all the things that your brain had to process, and I put them up here. And while we do this, everybody, I'm going to stop at certain points. And if you have a question, please feel free to ask the question. I welcome those as we go along. So you had to be able to have some hearing. So some part of the brain is associated with hearing. You have to understand the language. You have to understand humor. You have to have vision. You have to have a memory of a bra, what it does, and why probably all the men were pointing at her. You have to have muscles to be able to laugh. You have to be able to read. You have to focus your attention. So your brain is wonderful because it has all different kinds of regions that do work together, but they each have some specified jobs that we're actually going to take a look at now. Your brain is it is the most important and most valuable organ that you have in your body. And yet, if you went to look for something that was the size of your brain, you would go to this food store and you would find a medium-sized cauliflower. And how much does this very powerful organ weigh? What did you say? 10 pounds? 5 pounds? It weighs 3 pounds. 3 pounds, and it does that job. And if you were to take the brain and pick it up and squeeze it, I've actually done this to a human brain, it feels like nice, firm tofu. So the next time you eat tofu, think you're eating brain food. And in order for the brain to do its job, it's got to be able to send signals to the different part of the body. And it was made of nerve cells. And each of these nerve cells, I wonder if you could figure out how many nerve cells the brain might have. Does it have hundreds? Does it have thousands? Does it have 10,000? Does it have hundreds of thousands? Does it have millions? Does it have billions? Does it have trillions? Well, it has about 85 billion nerve cells. And by the way, everybody, don't destroy your nerve cells. You don't get another set. They don't make new nerve cells. And they work by communicating with the body back and forth using nerve signals. A combination of both electrical and chemical signals is what's being used. So let's explore about the brain. And I think we should start with something called the cerebrum. You may know about the cerebrum, and probably some of you have heard of it. I want you to think of the cerebrum as being the uppermost part of your brain, the most advanced part of your brain, and the biggest part of your brain. And we'll give you a front and a back of the brain. So let's get rid of this thing. So let's take a look at your cerebrum, everybody. And
excuse me, I'm not getting any picture. I don't know if
you don't have a picture?
I don't know. I'm not getting any picture on the
Does
screen.
anybody have a picture?
Yes, Mary, I'm going to mute you. I'm sorry, who's talking?
I have a picture.
May. I don't know why.
I do not either, Pat Wiggins.
Oh, that's interesting. It's
Cecilia
sharing.
Novice, I have a picture of the cerebrum.
Good. Anybody else? Is there?
I have a picture.
I think I'm sorry, for the purpose of the presentation, we're going to continue the program since some people have it. And it will be recorded, so you will be able to get it that way. May I apologize? And I think we just need to move on for now, but hopefully once we get rid of the slide sharing, then you'll be able to see it. So with that, please excuse us and go ahead, Barbara.
Okay. All
Sorry,
right.
just one quick question. Are you
Sure.
going to put up the,
What? I don't.
Okay, I think just go ahead.
You sure? Okay.
Yep.
I will give you a copy of the presentation too, so that you give it to them to see as well.
I will. And you can
Okay.
put questions in chat. So
Okay.
thank you. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, so here's our cerebrum, everybody. Like I was saying, it's the biggest part of the brain. It's the most advanced part of the brain. And in addition, everybody, this is the part of the brain that's associated with all the conscious things that we do. Without this part of the brain, everybody, there would be no consciousness. So I've showed you the front. It's in pretty pink on our picture, and it's in blue in the back. And let's explore the different parts of your cerebrum, just generally. We'll do a couple of specifically, to see what each of the parts of this part of the cerebrum do, in fact, do. So we're going to start with senses, and we're going to visit with a couple of them. Again, we do have a front, the pink, and the blue in the back. And we're going to start, and we're going to look at skin sensations. That's really important. And when you think of skin sensations, think of all the sensations you get from your skin. If somebody actually smacks your hand, you feel pain. If somebody shakes your hand too hard, really grips your hand, you feel pressure. If you accidentally touch a hot stove, you feel, ouch, hot. And holding an ice cube is not pleasurable because of the cold. And it also has the sense of touch, which we are going to explore a little bit more. You see in the back, you have vision. And perhaps you've heard the expression, you have eyes in the back of your head. That's where it comes from. Hearing, everybody, is on the side of the brain. Taste is towards the side, and smell is also on the side. Now, what you're looking at is you're looking at half of the brain. There is another half of the brain behind my screen. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on skin sensations, and we'll spend a little bit of time on smell. In the front of the brain, we have movement, muscle movement. And this movement I'm talking about is not the movement of your heart. This is the movement of the muscles that are used to move your bones. Everybody, please tap the top of your head, if you will. Everybody, please touch your nose. Everybody, please move your leg. You are using muscle movement that is initiated from the very top part of the brain in the front. Finally, we'll take a look at three a little bit advanced areas. All the sensations, everybody, are up and running when a baby is born. Vision takes a few days, but it's there. But the areas I'm talking about now, Wernicke's area is there. It's a language area, and it takes time to develop. No baby understands the spoken language immediately. The other language area we'll take a look is Broca's area, which is allowing you to form words to be able to make sentences and take thoughts and put them into words. No baby can do that. And finally, the most advanced part, which we'll take a brief look at, is the prefrontal area, the most sophisticated and executive part of the cerebrum. So let's just take a little bit of a look at touch to start with. So I want you to think, does anybody have any questions to this point? Somebody have a question? We'll take a question at this point. Please.
Hold on. And for those who can't see, Donna suggests that that you log in again. Someone wants to know how our brain knows when to wake up from sleep.
Okay, you have a couple of centers in the brain. One is in the hypothalamus, and this is a housekeeping system that is sensitive to waking you up. You also have something called the reticular activating center, which is in another part of the brain that will wake you up. And the other part of the brain that does a little bit of waking up is the part of the brain called the pineal gland, which releases or does not release melatonin. Melatonin is released when you sleep. When it's in low levels, you are awake. So there are three separate parts of the brain that are actually monitoring your ability to wake up. Okay, is there anything else that we like? Okay, so let's think about where your skin is most sensitive to touch. We know our body is covered by skin, but if you were to think about it, I want you to start at the top of your head, everybody, and I want you to work your way down your body. Which part of the skin in that part of the body is very sensitive to touch? Somebody touches you and you go, oh, yes, or oh, that was pleasant, or yes, I felt that. So think about it before I put up the answers. I'll give you a second to think about it from the head coming down the body. And let's see if we started, everybody got this one. You ready? Here we go. How many of you would say your lips are sensitive to touch? You pucker up with somebody, you feel that touch. Nice, nice kiss. How about your tongue, everybody? Our tongue is very sensitive to touch. If you ever lost a filling, you know the tongue finds the hole immediately, extremely sensitive to touch. I once had, and if you've ever bitten your tongue, you know it's very sensitive to pain, but to touch as well. Coming down a little bit, how about your hands? Your hands are very sensitive to touch, and we will definitely take a look at that sensitivity. How about this one, everybody? Your ears. Did you ever have a bug sit on your ear? A teeny weeny little bug. It's sensitive to touch. And finally, your feet. Nice. Oh, I wouldn't want somebody doing that to me. And finally, the breasts. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, I don't understand. How are these parts of the skin so sensitive to touch and other parts are not? Well, it turns out embedded in the skin are special cells that are called receptors. And the more of these receptors or specialized cells you have to receive the sense of touch, the more sensitive you are in that body region. So if we took a look at the lips, these receptors, there would be lots and lots of them concentrated in your lips. But if we took at the breast, you'd have lots and lots of these receptors for touch in your breasts. But if we looked at these two parts of the body that are least sensitive, your back, or if we looked at your arms or your legs, they're not so sensitive to touch because you don't have as many of these specialized cells receiving the information. Nobody gets ecstatic when you touch their calf. Nobody gets ecstatic when you touch their biceps muscle unless they're showing off. So touch is a very important sense. And you might be thinking, why is she spending time on this particular sense? Well, I have a job for you. Everybody, please, I want you to put up your left hand with your back of your hand facing you right now. And with your other hand, I want you to run your fingers over your left hand with your right hand, and get this sense of what you are feeling. So rub your fingers over the back of your other hand right now. Okay, everybody should have that experience. Now turn your hand with your palm facing you, and please take your fingers and run them down the palm of your hand. Start at the top of your fingers and rub it down the palm. I suspect most of you think, does anybody out there like to contribute what you think the answer is? Which is more sensitive? Linda has her hand raised. Linda, which side? Palm or outside of the hand?
The outside of the hand.
The outside of the hand. You don't think your palm is more sensitive? Try it again.
I think the palm is more sensitive.
Yeah, yes. In actual fact, everybody, the palm is more sensitive to the sense of touch. And you think to yourself, well, where do I use that information? Well, is there anybody out there that gets up in the middle of the night? Let me put it another way. Is there anybody up there that does not get up in the middle of the night? And for me, in the middle of the night, I have to go to the bathroom, okay? But let's say, for argument's sake, this particular night, it's very dark in your house. There's been a power failure. You have no generator. Your cell phone is dead. You forgot to buy batteries for the flashlight. You have no candles in the house. And now you're trying to find your way around the house. What do you have out in front of you? You have the palms and your fingers facing out to guide you. They are extremely sensitive to touch. And not only to touch, everybody, they are very sensitive to the shape and texture of objects. So you can tell the difference between a wall and a door, or a piece of furniture and your pillow, or the bathroom seat and something else in the bathroom, the handles, without your sense of vision. And this is really good if you happen to live in a house with a man, because I don't know about you, but when I go into the bathroom, I always check to see if the seat is down. Because like this man says, I can't remember whether I left the seat up on the toilet last night. And if you don't check that piece of information, you are going to wind up in the toilet. So having a sense of touch that's important in your fingers is really, really important. Okay, so the sense of touch. And who uses a sense of touch really are people that are blind. So the fingers and the sense of touch includes shape and texture, and allows them to read Braille, and allows you ladies to look in your pocketbook and find an object when you can't see it. So touch. Which brings us to the big 5 senses. We're going to get past the senses in a minute. We have hearing, vision, touch. We have smell, and we have taste. One of these is the most primitive of all the senses. I want you to think about it. Is it hearing? Maybe vision? Maybe touch? Gee, Barbara, you're talking about it. Maybe it's touch. Is it smell? Is it taste? So think about it. I hope you get the answer. The most primitive of all your senses is the sense of smell. If you got it right, congratulations. And I think if you've ever had dogs meet, they don't look at each other. They don't bark at each other, what they do. But to recognize the other dog, they use their sense of smell. And if you walk into somebody's house that has a dog, the dog greets you, of course, wagging its tail, hopefully. But the other thing the dog is, no matter how big or small the dog, they always find your crotch because they're looking for their sense of smell. This is the most primitive of our senses. And does the nose know? Yeah, the nose definitely knows. I want you also to think of something that you smell or have smelled in the past or recently, it doesn't matter when, and it brings back some kind of memory or some type of emotion. Think about it. When I think of something that brings back emotions, a smell, I have my mom's raincoat in the closet. She passed away about 5 years ago. And when I smell her raincoat, it still has her smell on it. And I think, oh, Mom, I remember when you did this or that. I get emotional. And in actual fact, your sense of smell has all sorts of connections that are really, really important. I know this looks like a scary picture of the brain, but we have the top of the brain, which kind of looks like it's got waves in it. And there's your nose. And there are odors that are coming into the nose. And when those odors come into your nose, they go to the bridge of your nose. And right up in the bridge of your nose are those little specialized cells that we talked about in the skin called receptors, except these are for the sense of smell. And once they get to the bridge of your nose, they're passed to this structure called the olfactory bulb. The main reason I'm bringing that to your attention is that's actually an outgrowth of the cerebrum. So the sense of smell goes directly to the brain with any stopovers. Other senses like hearing, vision, have stopovers in another part of the brain before it gets up to that higher authority, the cerebrum of the brain. And look at the connections that this now has. That sense of smell is taken into the brain, enters the brain, and the first structure that it encounters is your amygdala, which is the seat of emotions, which is why you get emotional about that smell if you have a connection. It then goes to the hippocampus, which is for memory. So the sense of smell, the single most important as far as primitive terms goes, and even today. And you know where we know about it? We know about it from this. A newborn baby. How does a newborn baby recognize its mother? It recognizes its mother within 3 days due to the sense of smell. How do you like that? So I thought maybe you'd be interested in your sense of smell. All right, so let's stop. Does anybody have a question? I need a question. Does anybody have a question? We'll take a question.
We have a question. Cecilia?
Please.
Okay, she asks.
Yes.
Hold on. She
Sure.
asks, I've been told that if you close your eyes and look up, sort of looking up into your brain, you can visualize what you are spelling, learning, want to accomplish, etc. That's why I thought the vision center was in the front. Is there a part of the front that assists in visualizing?
No, actually not. The only thing that I can tell you about visualizing in the front is the front of the brain controls the eyeball movement. Okay, but as far as no, not really, just the eyeball movement, which I guess in some ways would be yes, because if your eyeballs are not moving, in the proper way, you might not see things clearly. So yes, but to interpret vision, something that's coming in through the eye, all interpretation takes place in the back of the brain. Good question though, really good question. Okay, anything else?
Well, but so like if you're trying to like remember, like if you're studying a language
Mhm.
and you look up, like you close your eyes and you look, like to me, it always helps if I write it out and I
Okay.
visualize it. Like
All
a
right.
basketball player will visualize himself making the shot over and over.
Okay.
Is that because of the movement or?
That's more the movement. Yeah, that's more the movement. How to arc the ball, how to approach it, how to put your arm up. That's more a movement thing. But it's still vision. So it is a very good question. Thank you. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer.
You're very welcome. No problem. All right, which brings us to some areas that are present, but not quite up and working when you are a newborn baby. One's called Wernicke's, one's called Broca's, and these are your language areas, everybody. And you notice that Wernicke's, we're going to talk about that first. It's on the side of the brain. And by the way, this just only appears most in about 95% of people on the left side of your brain, about 95% of the people. So let's take a look at what Wernicke's area is. I thought you might find it of interest. This is the part of the brain that allows you to understand the written and spoken language. There is no newborn that understands the written and spoken language at birth. These centers take time to develop. So let's take a look at what we have. And as far as developing goes, they allow you to understand the written and spoken language, but all the nuances of the language as well, like how somebody's voice sounds. For instance, if you're on the phone with somebody, you can't see them, but you know that gentleman in the middle may have some concerns by the tone of his voice. That's part of the language, a nuance of the language. If you're talking to the lady that's got that big smile and happy, you know she's happy. You can't see her, but you know it. And finally, we have this other gentleman at the other side. When you talk to him, you know there's a problem. And so it's not just taking and understanding. Understanding involves things like nuances like this. How many of you have ever tried to use sarcasm on a child, maybe 9 and younger? I've never had luck with it. Maybe you have, because children don't quite get sarcasm. That develops as Wernicke's area develops. And so children take things literally. This is not developed enough in a child for them to get it. So here's what you said. This person said, I told my 5-year-old he could watch TV as soon as he ate half of his hot dog. And here's what the child did. The child took the person literally. There it is, okay? Or let's take a look at a joke and see if you get some jokes that involve sarcasm. A child would not, but let's see if you do. Prepare yourself. Nice perfume. Must you marinate in it? A child wouldn't get that. Or, I've often thought this next one is something I've wanted to say to my children. This is an excellent time for you to become a missing person. Boy, did I want to say that more than once. Or, now we know why some animals eat their own children. Would a young child get this? No, because they take things literally. For instance, my son was watching, he was about 7 years old, and we were watching a baseball game. And the announcer said that the pitcher had just thrown a screaming fastball. And my son looked at me and he said, Mommy, I didn't hear the ball going, ah! True, literal interpretation. Just one example of where some children, few children, but some do. I taught in elementary school many years ago, and there was this old battle axe teacher like you see there with her paddle. And I was standing outside the room, and she didn't see me standing there. And in the back of the room, there were 2 little boys messing around. Little boys mess around, all right? They fight, they squirm, they do this, they pick up things, they throw them down. And she looks at this child, Johnny, and she says to Johnny, where were you born? In a barn? And Johnny turned to her, he's 6 years old, and he said to her, yeah, and every time you open your mouth, I feel right at home. Well, the other children didn't get it, but the teacher did, and the next time she never said that to Johnny ever again. A child with Wernicke's working really at a very early age. Finally, do children get adult jokes? No, they don't get adult jokes. Again, Wernicke's isn't formed enough to establish that. So my mom took my children that were 6 and 8 to see the airplane movie. When she came out, she was mortified that they had watched this scene, perhaps you remember, with the autopilot, and she blew him up. My mother was crazed that maybe the kids understood what that was about. Did they? Of course they didn't. They had no idea. I'm going to skip Lorena Bobbitt if you don't mind. So let's take a look now at another part of the cerebrum. And this time we're going to take, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
We have 2 questions.
Oh, sure.
Han, would you like to ask your question?
Of course.
Hi, I have 2 questions actually. Why can't I unsee an optical illusion even though I understand how the illusion works? And my second question is, what is happening when you have a stroke and you can't see from one side anymore?
Okay, the stroke I can answer. The optical illusion, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I can't honestly answer that, but I am going to do something about stroke in about 5 minutes. I can answer that. It depends. Yeah, well, let me answer it this way too. If you have a stroke in the eye, you've actually damaged part of that vision center in the back of your eye. Okay, so that is actually a stroke to the vision center. And that if you have a stroke, you deprive certain cells, some cells, of blood flow, which carries oxygen and nutrients to them to keep them alive. If it's long enough, those cells will be damaged, and that part of the vision center will no longer be available to you. And that can cause partial blindness, total blindness, moderate blindness, whatever. So that I can answer that one for you. The other one I can't answer for you. I'm sorry. Does that help you with the stroke? I
Han,
hope.
Yes, sorry, I
Oh.
had muted myself. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Did somebody else have a question?
Jackie has a question.
Yes,
Jackie?
please. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, just very simple, general terms. How do scientists study the brain? Like how do they get all this information?
Okay,
Just very high level.
a lot of the information is getting by CAT scans, by PET scans. They have patients. When you have patients that are awake, you can see brain when things are done or said. You can see different parts of the brain lighting up. You can see connections between things. Slow process done over many, many years at this point of evaluating how different parts of the brain react to each other, which parts are connected to each other. If you do this, what happens? If you do that, what happens in the brain itself? So it's a tedious process, but it's fundamentally pretty sound. Do they change their mind periodically? Yes. Do we come up with new technology to learn different things about the brain? Absolutely, yes. Okay, does that help?
You are.
May I ask a question? I know there's discussion that people are right brain dominated or left brain dominated.
There's a thought that you have a right side and left side, they both work together. You don't just work one part of the brain and the other part doesn't function. They both work together. And so right-sided, left-sided, I guess, means somebody's right-handed. It doesn't mean that the right part of the brain is the most dominant part. It could be, but there's some difference of opinions about that at this point. Okay.
one more question from Angela.
Good.
Hold on. Angela, are you there? How does okay, I'm sorry. I thought we had one more.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes, I'm here.
did you have another question?
No, just about, always had bad memories since I was a child. So what causes?
We'll get to the part of the brain that does memory. If you give me a couple of minutes, I'll get to it. How's that?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Joy, Joy has a question too, but Joy, why don't you hold off for a second and we'll get right back to you.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys. So here's the cerebrum, again, the front and the back. And this time we're going to take a look at the front of the brain, and the area that's in that yellow dot in the front of the brain is the part of the brain that initiates all muscle movement that only includes the muscles that move the bones. So these are willful movements or what's called voluntary movements. So the front of the brain is devoted, to muscle movement. And if you damage this part of the brain that initiates muscle movement, you will lose control of the muscles that are on the side of the body. For instance, we have this part in the right side of the brain, and we have another one of these centers on the left side of the brain. So there are two of these that initiate muscle movement. And to be honest with you, I thought I would show you this because it'll make sense to some of the questions that you're asking. That part of the brain that initiates muscle movement is called the primary motor area. And think of the brain, think of the cerebrum, that big part, the upper part, as being the cap of the mushroom. Think of the rest of the green line coming down as the stem of the mushroom. And in actual fact, underneath the cerebrum is the brain stem. So we're going to follow the pathway of some nerve signals coming from the area that initiates muscle movement. We're going to follow it down this pathway to that left hand that's on the piano. And we're starting on the right side of the brain and coming down. First area we come to, on this stem is the midbrain. We come down a little further to the pons. And by the way, it's not named after the hand cream, okay? Coming down a little further, we come to the medulla. So this is all on the right side of the brain. Does everybody see that? The top part in the cerebrum coming down the right side of the stem. And then in the medulla, you might notice that that pathway crosses over to the right side. Does everybody see that? It comes over to the other side, or to the left side, and it comes down, sorry, the left side, and it comes down. It comes down through the spinal cord on the left side, and it enters and makes the muscles in the left hand move. About 95% of the muscles, 90 to 95% of the muscles you willfully control are controlled by the opposite side of the brain. And I think you all know this, because when people have a stroke, let's say a person has a stroke on the right side of the brain, what side of the body is affected? It will be the left side. Just so you understand a little bit about how that happens. A lot of people have asked questions about that. All right, so let's go to something a little cheerier. Wernicke's area is a language area. We talked about being able to understand the written and spoken language. Broca's area, on the other side, is in the front of the brain, which means it's got to be involved with muscles that are controlled, that you control by will. And this is going to refine some of the activities or movements of muscles. So this is the part of the brain, Broca, that allows you to take thoughts and put them into words, thoughts into words. And in order to do that, we need some muscles that are working, that we control. One of them, your diaphragm. You can't say a word if you can't breathe, okay? Another one that you don't control, or your voice box. Your voice box muscles have to be working, or you cannot talk. But there are some others. Think about this. Look at that little tongue, okay? That little tongue's important. When you learn a language, initial language or first language, the tongue has to learn to do certain movements in order for you to speak. To show you how true that is, everybody, please stick your tongue out. I'm going to stick my tongue out. And I want you all to say your name out loud. I'm going to do it right now. Ella, Ella, Ella. You are probably getting pretty much the same sound, okay? You need to have that tongue moving properly in order to change thoughts into words. It's not the only one. We'll do a couple more. You have to be able to open or close your mouth. Everybody, try talking without opening and closing your mouth. Impossible. These signals are coming from a special area, Broca's area, to allow you to do this. Coming down, another one. Everybody, please say the word would. Please, would. And see if you're not puckering up your lips in order to do that. So these are some of the muscles that are involved in talking. And these muscles are initiated and are in command when you are trying. Broca's area is allowing you to speak. Now we have some tongue twisters here. I thought maybe Peter Piper, but maybe you would like to do this one. You're going to do this by yourselves so that nobody gets embarrassed. And you're going to try this. I'm going to say it slow and then I'll say it fast. And at your leisure and afterwards, you can try it yourself. Let me do it once. One smart fellow, he felt smart. Two smart fellows, they felt smart. Three smart fellows, they all felt smart. Broca's area, if you practice, you can get faster with doing words, right? So let's try. I'm going to take it up to tempo. One smart fellow, he felt smart. Two smart fellows, they felt smart. Three smart fellows, they all felt smart. If you want to try that at home yourself up to tempo, be my guest. But you might find yourself smelting something that you don't want to smelt. So people that are very good at doing tongue twisters, Broca's area is allowing them to take those thoughts and put them into words very quickly. It does require practice. And we're not doing this one at all. All right, so the language areas, everybody, like I said, they are there, but they take time to develop, which brings us to the prefrontal area, which is the very, very front part of your cerebrum. The most sophisticated developed part of the cerebrum is in the prefrontal area. It controls executive functions. And you might be thinking to yourself, what do we mean by executive functions? Well, here's what it means. This is the part of the brain that's in charge of short-term memory. So I assume that you probably recognize these two actors. I believe one is Humphrey Bogart, and the other one, I hear you saying it, is Lauren Bacall. And they're playing a game of chess. If you've ever played a game of chess, you know short-term memory is involved. You look at the board, you try to determine or think what your fellow player might be doing, the move, and you try and move ahead in your head what the next move might be for you. Short-term memory doesn't last long. But maybe you've had more of experience if you've ever gone to a hotel. You go to the hotel. The man at the desk greets you, gives you your room key. You say thank you. He gives you your room number. You take the key. You move 5 steps away from the desk, and all of a sudden you think to yourself, shoot, what room was that? I've had it happen. I don't know about you, but I've had it happen. And you sheepishly walk back to the desk and say, I'm so sorry. I forgot my room number. Short-term memory. If you've done it, everybody does it. So short-term memory is housed in the prefrontal cortex, along with some executive functions. And by the way, this prefrontal area does not fully develop until you're about 25 years old in most people. So here's an example. Most children don't have judgment, but this lady should. If you live with a man, what? You hid the remote during the Super Bowl? The crime of the century. Poor judgment on the lady's part. Or maybe you've seen a 2-year-old scream and yell. Impulse control is housed in this part of the brain. It's not fully functional at 2 years old. It takes some time. And even as an adult, you might have some trouble. I would really like that piece of brownie there, or that apple. Impulse control. Or maybe this. This is how some people eat a box of cookies. I'm going to eat 1 or 2 a day so they last. How commendable. Personally, I'm the other person. I ate them all while you're reading the first panel of this comic. I have no impulse control as far as cookies go, and I'm a grown adult for sure. Well, maybe not, but I think I am. Impulse control should get better as you get older. Consequence of actions. You know, if you put hot water on in the sink and you put your hand in it, you're going to get burned. Young children are not so aware of that. Consequence of actions. How about this? Here's a consequence of an action. You go, the waitress says, our treat for tonight is stuffed prune delight. The consequence of the actions, the guy's got it. No thanks. I hate to eat and run. I kind of like that. Planning is an executive function housed in the prefrontal area. Abstract ideas, reasoning, personality. And by the way, this prefrontal area that we're talking about is the part where they used to do lobotomies, where they used to try and change personalities of criminals so they were more subdued. It's no longer done. It hasn't been done since 1950s. But personality is housed in this prefrontal area. People's personalities do develop. This area develops slowly up until at least about the age of 25 in some people. Concern for others, although young children certainly show a certain amount of concern for others even at that point. Which brings us, okay, let's stop. Anybody have a question? We'll do a question.
We've got a bunch of questions.
Oh, I bet you do.
Um,
I'm so
let's
sure.
see.
Go ahead.
Somebody was for Joy. Joy is first.
Hi, my son had a question. He wants to know what part of the brain is controls laughter.
Laughter is a combination of things. So you have a connection between emotions and speech and everything else that goes with laughing. So in the part of the brain we're going to do now is called the amygdala. The amygdala is the house of emotions. Okay, this house, we have all the emotions like joy and happiness and laughter. When the brain interprets something and it connects to the amygdala, it will signal it that this is a pleasant experience. And depending on how pleasant it is whether you will have that laughing or you'll just, say, oh, that's funny, but it's connected to this part of the brain. The hippocampus is involved. I can't give you one part. Too many parts of the brain are connected, but it goes from the cerebrum and the amygdala and the hippocampus. Okay, so it's several different parts of the brain that are involved in laughter, definitely.
Cecilia did you want to ask your question? Could you please repeat what you said earlier about most people only have use
Oh, okay.
of it on the left side?
Most people
Oh,
say,
yeah, that's what it was. Sorry, I couldn't remember what I asked. I have a
okay,
couple questions. Yeah, go ahead.
what's the question?
Oh, you had much earlier, before you talked about stroke, you had said that most people only use it or use something or house it within the left side of the brain.
Oh,
What's that referring to? I missed it.
oh, the only part, the language area. The language areas are 95% of the people housed on the left side of the brain.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Now there are, most people, so about 95%, but there are the other 5% that don't have it there, but 95% do. Yeah. Okay.
What's unusual about those 5%? Like what do they have? What skills do they have?
I don't know. Some people don't have the heart on the proper side of the body, but it still works.
Oh, okay.
Not all people are created quote unquote equal as far as where the body parts are. So
Right, true.
okay. All right.
Okay, so Michael has a question. Michael,
Okay.
do you want to ask
Michael.
a question? How does the brain heal after an injury?
All right. So the brain heals by, well, if you have an injury, sometimes those particular brain cells are gone. It does heal in the terms of no more damage takes place. But if you have done damage in concussions, it does, as far as healing, not so much the brain cells. I have to think about it a little bit. Give me a couple of seconds. I'll at the end, I'll give you the answer. How's that? I have to think about it a little bit in terms of how I can present it to you. All right, I will give it to you later, though. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara, did you
Yes.
want to ask a question? Barbara Lamort?
Okay, I have two questions. Why are some people predominantly visual learners or auditory learners or tactile learners? And the other one is another participant was asking a question about left brain versus right brain.
Right.
And my understanding of that is that some people are more skilled in mathematic related subjects, and other people are more skilled in language related subjects. And to me, I've heard that referred to as left brain versus right brain.
And they do still call it that, but there is some discussion about the dominance of yes, but they're not sure they're specifically, for instance, some people are good at math, but they're also good at art. And supposedly they're not on the same side of the brain.
Right.
They're not. So so there is a discussion about it. I don't have a conclusive answer for you. As far as the other part, what was the other part, the first part?
Some people are visual learners,
Okay.
you know, primarily, or auditory or kinetic.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
That I wouldn't know about. I'm sorry. That I really
No,
don't
that's
know.
okay. Thank you.
You're very
All right,
welcome. Sorry.
may I ask one question in terms of memory?
Mhm.
If you can't find the word, but later it comes back to you, what causes that, or how
Okay.
does that work?
All right, so just quickly about that. So what happens as we all age, what happens is there are, for transmission of nerve signals from the brain down to the body and up from the body and even in the brain itself, there are fibers that are covered with an insulation. And as we get older, the insulation wears off a little bit, and which means that the signals do not pass as quickly as they used to. And this insulation, if you're losing a little bit, also sometimes there is damage to cells, and the pathway that was normally taken to bring up that information has changed. So there are several reasons why you may not be able to bring something up right away. And sometimes you never bring it up, and sometimes you do. So it's simply an aging process, a normal aging process. Normal aging does not mean that you have to get some type of dementia. Okay, that's not a normal aging process. But losing a little bit about how fast things are transmitted from the brain down to the structures or up to the brain, that does happen, or even within the brain itself. Okay, so that's how that works.
So I'm going to ask people to hold questions to the
Okay, yeah,
next
let's get
question
through it.
section.
Yeah.
But I just want to mention, and Lady Di says young children learn from facial expressions. Long-term use of being forced to wear masks will result in learning setbacks.
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I don't think, I just don't know. I just don't know. We've never had it happen before, so I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay, so let me introduce you to the limbic system, everybody. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what's this? Well, the limbic system is evolutionarily the most primitive of all the brain structures. And it is found underneath the cerebrum, which is why I'm bringing it up to you. And this is a part of the brain that is concerned with the structures that are emotions and behaviors that are concerned with our survival as not only just a person, but as a species. So keep in mind structures that are involved in the emotions and behaviors that keep us alive. So let me introduce you to two of the limbic system members, and that would be your amygdala, which, by the way, since we're learning the Greek alphabet with COVID, you might as well learn a little more Greek. It means amygdala means almond, and it is the seat of our emotions. And hippocampus is from a Greek word, or it looks like a hippocampus, a seahorse, and it is for a memory. So emotions and memory are housed in your limbic system. Memory, important here, is this is long-term memory. This is where short-term memory is converted into long-term memory. And let's give a little clapping for the limbic system, which we're going to explore right now. And here we go. Emotions, memory, behaviors associated with survival. So let's start with emotions. You want to be a survivor. Your amygdala says, yeah, get angry. That'll help you survive for sure. Be a little worried. That'll help you. Be cautious. That can't hurt. Be anxious. That helps you keep your wits about you. Be happy. Happiness is good. Be sad. That'll keep you a survivor. Be shocked. And when you're shocked, maybe you'll do something. And Fred Flintstone would be happy to agree with that, except for one thing. We are missing the most important emotion on this screen that I've showed you that allows you to survive. I'd like just one person to please raise their hand to be recognized and tell me what emotion we are missing here that contributes the most to our survival. What emotion are we missing? One person, if you will, please. And Diane, if you'll see if there's somebody that raises their hand and let them say it.
I'm going to answer it. I
Please.
think fear.
That's it. Fear it is. Fear is the single most important emotion to keeping us alive. And what are these people experiencing? This man, he is experiencing fear. And what is this lady experiencing? She is experiencing fear. And I think we all know the name of this person. She is Janet who? She is a Janet. Yeah, she is. And the move, Psycho, thank you, Psycho. And does anybody happen to remember the scene that causes her to look like that?
She's in the shower.
Yeah,
And
I have it.
somebody opens the curtain.
Yep, all right, so let's go back here and experience this idea of
It's a
fear.
night.
All right, everybody's mics off, please. Okay, all right, so when you think of fear, are infants born afraid of things? Many people will tell you not. A baby, a newborn baby, is not afraid of rolling off the bed, doesn't know to be afraid. They can be shocked, they can be surprised, they can be not frightened, but they can have emotions. But I'm wondering if fear, this is up for grabs, everybody. I'm not telling you it's exactly it, but there is a big discussion about it. A lot of people believe that fear conditioning takes place in your amygdala. And what is fear conditioning? It means that through a series of repeated experiences, you learn to become afraid of something. For instance, if you would experience the same thing over and over in your brain, so you would have a pathway formed. And let's say the information goes from nerve cell A to B to C to D, and the same pathway to D, and the same pathway A to B to C to D, A to B to C to D, and finally a memory is formed. All right, so I want you to think about that. I can't give you a specific answer, but fear conditioning does take a place. I know I learned to be afraid of lightning. I wasn't afraid of it. I didn't like the sound, it annoyed me, but I learned to be afraid of it, which is a very different thing. I think I'm not going to show you the shower scene unless you all want to see it. Nah, let's be friendly and not show it to you. So here's something else about your, about this part of the brain. The amygdala also receives signals of potential danger, and it sets off a series of reactions that help you protect yourself. So, what's your reaction to this guy? How many of you have ever gotten bad vibes about somebody? They don't talk to you, but something about them gives you bad vibes. Your amygdala is telling you there might be potential danger here. Look at this man. Would you invite this man into your house? Look at him. He's not talking, but there's something about him that seems frightening to me. Maybe it's his expression. Maybe it's his teeth. Looks like he's going to bite me. Look at him. Are you getting that same reaction to him? Your amygdala is telling you, be careful. It sets off all sorts of things to set you on the alert. Let's take a look at him one more time. And now, here he is without his makeup on. What do you think now? What's your reaction now to this man? Are you still so afraid of him as you were? Your amygdala is probably saying, not so bad, calm down. We're not on the alert. Amygdala, a very important ancient part of the brain. which brings us to your hippocampus. And by the way, here's the hippo on campus. And this is long-term memory, everybody. We won't have too much time for this at all, but long-term memory is taking short-term memory and it converts it into long-term memory. And by the way, scientists aren't exactly sure how that happens. And there is one disease in particular that affects the hippocampus first. And I think you all are aware of that disease. It starts with an A, and I think you can all guess it's Alzheimer's disease. Now, here's the problem. If you cannot make new memories by converting short-term memory into long-term memory, you are always going to be living in the past. And people that have lost Alzheimer's disease can't remember things that happened a week ago or a day ago, or maybe not even a month ago, but they have those long-term memories that were made before, and that's where they can live. So at some point, maybe we'll do something about Alzheimer's disease if you'd like, but right now we actually don't have time. But it is the hippocampus that is affected by Alzheimer's disease. Also, in your hippocampus, something else happens in the hippocampus that's even a nicer thing. It files away memories, and it takes memories that are associated with them and puts them together. So when you remember, let's say, a special occasion like a wedding, there are lots of memories that are associated with it that the hippocampus has said, okay, let's put this in a little package. So when you remember one of those memories, a lot of the other memories will come back at the same time. These people that you're looking at, obviously, or pretty much probably, you know, they were probably married in the 1940s, and this happens to be my parents. I wasn't at their wedding, but they had lots of memories of their wedding. And I'm sure if you are married, you probably have some memories of your people that were there, music, what the place looked like. This is your hippocampus. You have to think for all those wonderful memories that you do have. All right, so this center that we're talking about, the amygdala, and the other part, the hippocampus, but they're all part of the system that we talked about, and the limbic system. And survival also requires pleasurable behaviors. And when you have pleasurable behaviors, they activate the brain's reward center. And when the reward center is activated, it releases a chemical called dopamine. And it releases tremendous amounts, this in different parts of the brain, and it makes you feel pleasure. So let's take a look at the pleasurable behaviors that trigger the reward center, that releases dopamine and excites other parts of the brain to give you pleasure. Here we go. So here we are, one of those pleasurable behaviors. I would tell you, give you a hint, it starts with an S and ends with an X. And here's what she's saying. Oh, I don't know, but you can see it. I hope you can see it. She's saying Homo erectus, Homo floppus, if you ask me. So here's sex, very important behavior, brings pleasure, essential to survival of the species for sure. Or the reward center is also quote unquote turned on by another activity that most of us like. How many of you can say or name a food you love? Think about a food you love. You are talking about the pleasure of love. Foods, for me, it's chocolate, no doubt about it. I love chocolate. Too bad I'm allergic to it. Or some people love meat. And some people absolutely love pizza. Think of the food that you love and how much pleasure it brings you when you eat it. And you keep eating it because it brings you pleasure, because you are tapping into the pleasure center of your brain. The reward center. So here's that lovely piece of cake. And you can see the blue is the cerebrum, everybody. So the limbic system is under the cerebrum. So let's take a look. It activates something in the cerebrum in addition, but let's take a look. There's where it starts, the reward center. So when you eat that delicious piece of cake, it triggers this part of the brain called the VTA, not the PTA, but the VTA. We don't care what it is, but it's triggered. And when it's triggered, it releases dopamine. And the dopamine is picked up by other parts of the brain that have receptors, specialized cells for it. The amygdala home of emotion says, oh, this is so delicious. Oh my God, I feel so good. I'm happy. I'm euphoric. I'm joyful. It also taps into the hippocampus. It says, oh, let me remember what cake that was on the menu. Let me remember what a restaurant I am. I want to remember this all. It taps the memory. It taps into another part called the NA, which simply means movement. In the front is movement. Let me remember how I approach this. Let me remember how to bring that fork into that piece of cake and move it up to my mouth. And finally, the prefrontal area, which allows you to focus your attention on that delicious piece of cake. All excited because of the release of dopamine by the reward center. So here we are at the hippocampus and the amygdala, which we've done. But now, oh, sorry guys, I ran amok there. I apologize. Do we have time to do the hypothalamus? It won't take long.
Oh, sure.
Are you sure?
But you forewarned here that I'm going to ask you to come back. So going into that, sure. And then we just have a few questions.
Okay.
And then we'll be good.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we've seen the hippocampus, we've seen the amygdala, and now we're in a region right near them called the hypothalamus. Now, this you may or may not know about, but this is the part of the brain that monitors the internal environment and keeps it steady. So when you get sick, the hypothalamus is monitoring and then says, what can we do to bring it back to a normal state? So let's take a look at your hypothalamus. And I think you'll find this interesting. This is also the part of the brain that controls, whether you are thirsty or not thirsty, or whether you are full or whether you are hungry. How does it possibly do that? Well, here's how it does it. The question is to eat or not to eat. That is the question. And your hypothalamus is Dracula, right? And blood passes through your hypothalamus and it is sampled by your thalamus, quote unquote, sampled by your hypothalamus to see what's in the blood to tell you, should you eat or not eat? If it samples and finds insulin in the blood, it tells it that you have eaten something that has carbohydrates, sugars, starches, carbohydrates, and that's good because the body could use that as energy. Perfect. You don't have to eat anymore. We have enough to make energy from these carbohydrates. Or if it samples and finds leptin in the blood, which is released by fat cells, that means you've eaten something fatty. And that can also be used to make energy, to keep the body warm, to make the body function, so you can stop eating, no problem. And so when you go out to dinner, if you listen to your hypothalamus, you would order a dinner, it would say stop eating. You would order a dinner that looks like this, which unfortunately sometimes I've been served. But if it samples and finds ghrelin, and if you want to give it a little life, you can go ghrelin. Ghrelin is released by the stomach and small intestine, and this says there is not enough food available to make energy and to make heat, and therefore you can go out and let's eat. There you are. And so let's see what you do. So one says stop eating and one says let's eat. So you go out to a meal, and I want you all to think if you've done this. Ready? You go out to a meal, a restaurant, nice restaurant, and maybe you start off with a glass of wine, and they put bread on the table, and you're starving, so you eat all the bread, and they bring more bread, and they keep bringing bread, and you're overloaded with bread. but it doesn't stop you from ordering the meal, right? You may have soup, you might have a salad, you might have an appetizer, and then you eat the main course and you're still eating the bread in between. And you say to each other, I am stuffed, I am full. And yet your hippocampus is saying to you, stop eating. We have enough carbohydrates. I am tasting insulin. I have enough fat. I'm tasting that leptin. Stop eating, stop eating. But when the waiter comes over and asks you, do you want dessert? You say, yes. And you eat the dessert. And when you eat the dessert, the hypothalamus has warned you, stop eating. Stop eating, but you don't listen. And of course, how do you feel? You feel sick. Maybe you don't, but I do. And finally, how does the hypothalamus know if you're thirsty or not? Well, it samples your blood. And what it's looking for, everybody, is how thick. If the blood is too thick, which means it's going to be sluggishly moving a little less quickly than it should, or it's too thin, and that's not so good either. So let's say your blood is on this particular day a little too thick. It will say to you, you're thirsty. And maybe if you're a child, you drink from the hose. Probably not a best plan. Or maybe you don't feel like getting up and you make a contraption to get water into you. Or maybe you're a child and you drink from the bathtubs. Or you're so thirsty, you get your own bottle and fall over. This is the hypothalamus saying, look, we have to thin out the blood a little bit. You are allowed to drink. Now, is there ever a time that we drink too much? And the answer is yes. I want you to look at these things. Apple juice, Jello, orange, some clear, whatever that is, liquid, some clear liquids, nothing red. Anybody know the procedure they might be preparing for? If you said a colonoscopy, you are probably correct. And do you ever have to drink that gallon jug that they give you? At first, it's not so bad. Your hypothalamus says, okay, fine. But when you try and put down the last bit of that liquid, your hypothalamus revolts. And sometimes you actually throw it back up. You cannot get it down. The hypothalamus is on guard. Enough liquid, please. And finally, in conclusion, go out and get yourself 10 feet of garden hose for $8. Get yourself a step ladder for $29. Get yourself binoculars for $35. Leaving your colonoscopy to the professionals is priceless. And with that, everybody, I will stop sharing my screen and I will bring you back. That's
I'm going to stop the recording.